Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I am Ben, and this is the Leo Jaymz 39-inch solid body electric guitar. That's right. Let's get into it. All right, let's just get this out of the way at the top of the video. I'm not going to refer to this guitar as the Leo Jaymz 39-inch solid body electric guitar. I'm going to call it by the name that's written on the headstock here, which just simply says Double Cut Standard. You gotta admit, that's a much better name, right? The Leo Jaymz Double Cut Standard. Now that that is out of the way, so this is the Leo Jaymz Double Cut Standard. It is a budget SG copycat guitar. Some of you might be wondering, well, why would you pick up that guitar when Epiphone has plenty of budget SG models, I think going as low as $150? Well, the answer to that is all of their SG special models only have master volume and master tone control, and I kind of wanted to have control over both of them. I thought it would be something kind of fun. Now this guitar does cost about $150. I did get it at Amazon.com, and another thing that I like about this guitar is while it does sort of emulate an SG body, it's actually a lot different in a lot of ways, including the headstock, which is not a Gibson headstock. It's definitely influenced by it, but it is its own thing for sure. And I do like that about this guitar. I like that they want to be that guitar, but not actually copy that guitar. A few weeks ago, I did a review on the Gibson LP style guitar. My biggest complaint is that they just blatantly stole everything from Gibson for that guitar, whereas this guitar makes a lot of differences, which I'll go over as this video progresses. So this guitar does have a pretty solid 4.4 out of 5-star reviews on Amazon.com, and I think there's over 250 reviews, somewhere around that. So it's actually a pretty impressive review for this guitar. So I'm gonna see if I can hit that same number by the end of this. Now, like I did say before, this is the most affordable guitar I've ever bought. It cost me about $150. I think the closest thing was in 1997. I got a Jackson Dinky for, I think it was $189. And you know, that was what, 28 years ago, something like that. So the fact that this guitar costs less than that is something special for sure. Now here's a clip from the unboxing earlier today. Got Leo Jaymz right there on the front of the box. The guitar comes nested in its form-fitted foam mold. Try saying that 10 times. There's an ad here for something called the Fret Zealot. Cool name, but I think it's just a type of guitar teaching program. Then we've got some Allen keys for adjusting the bridge and a short cable that will connect your guitar to an amp that they are presuming that you have. All right, that's kind of it. And then of course you've got this guitar here, which looks pretty good. Looks like it survived the trek across the United States. So very reminiscent of a Gibson SG, of course. You can see it's certainly inspired by that. Of course, this guitar, unlike the Gibson SG, does not have a mahogany body, but this is a poplar body, which is a very budget-friendly wood to come by. I was pleasantly surprised, though, to see that this is the actual body itself, not a veneer on top. And by my estimations, it is a 3-piece body glued together. It looks like one right here in the middle, and then another one kind of splitting the controls here on the side. But the assembly of it does look pretty good. I don't really see any imperfections. Now, if you were to take this guitar and overlay it with the Gibson SG, you can actually see quite a bit of the differences here. Now, I'm going to line up the bottom of the fretboard and the Tune-O-Matic bridge there, which should be pretty accurate because they're both the same scale. You can see that you have a lot more access on the Gibson SG there, where the fretboard connects to the body around the 22nd fret, whereas if we look at the Leo Jaymz model, you can see the lower horn kind of comes off at around the 18th fret. So you certainly lose some access, or at least ease of access, to those upper frets there. I'm curious how that will affect the neck dive on this guitar also, because Gibson SG's pretty well known for having a little neck dive here and there. Now, since we've got this overlay ready to go, check out these pickups here too. You can see that the neck pickup on the Leo Jaymz is pretty much butted up right there against the bottom of the neck, whereas there's a good inch gap there between the neck and the fretboard on the Gibson SG. So I'm curious if that's going to give us even chewier tones on the neck pickup or not. And of course, I don't know how these pickups are going to sound yet, so we're going to figure that out together. And lastly, if we look at the carves, you can see that the Leo Jaymz has not really much in the way of horn carves here at all. In fact, there's not really much carving at all on the body, with the exception being this one carve right here. And that is quite a wide carve too. I'd say it's at least twice as wide as what you find on the Gibson SG there. Let's see if you can make that out. And actually, something that's kind of funny that I just noticed is the carve on the front perfectly matches the carve on the back here. The one single carve on the side. So I'm wondering if they sell this guitar as a left-hand model as well. That'd be pretty easy to adapt You just have to route everything on the front, on the back side, and vice versa, and make a different neck cutout on the opposite side. But yeah, other than this thick carve right here, there's really not a lot of carving on this guitar at all. I mean, even the bottom is just flat 90-degree angles here. And moving on from there, we get to a bolt-on maple neck here. You can see the plate on the back side attaching it to the body. And then inside this neck, we've got a composite ebony fretboard. Now, I was curious, what exactly is composite ebony? And it turns out composite ebony might not be ebony at all, actually. Seems like it's tulip wood and blended with something else, and they kind of just make this like pulpy mulch out of it and then manufacture this board for the neck. Kind of a lot like how I think Richlight is made. Now we'll see how it plays, but I have to admit it does look pretty good. It definitely looks the part of ebony. It's certainly dark enough. And I should have known, there's no way they would have put genuine ebony on a $150 guitar. Now let's give you some measurements of this neck here. Up at the nut, I'm getting a 1.64, which is a little bit thinner than Gibson's 1.68. On the first fret, I'm getting a 0.86, and moving down here to the 12th fret, I'm getting a 0.89. Not much thickness growth over the length of this. Now I will say the profile of this neck is somewhere around a medium C, not quite the softest and not quite the more angular C, but a medium C. I'll draw it right here so you have an idea of what the heck I'm talking about. Moving on to the headstock here, this is connected to the neck with a scarf joint. It actually starts here around the 3rd fret and connects right here around the bottom of the nut. So it's actually a very, very shallow angle there. And speaking of angles, I was really curious about if there was any angle to this neck, as most SGs do have a pretty good angle on them, and there actually is a little bit of one. So if I zero out the meter here on the neck, then you can see that the body is sitting at about a 1.8 degree difference, or you could say that the neck is a 1.8 degree angle back from the body. And then if I move it over here to the headstock, you can see that that's sitting at about a 15.2 degree angle back from the neck itself, which is actually pretty close to what you would find on a Epiphone, if not just a little bit steeper than that. Now, one thing I will say about this neck is it's definitely got a little bendiness to it. And I don't mean like it showed up and it's warped, but I mean, it's got a little bit of a, it almost sounds like a sitar. That's how flexible it is. I know all necks have a little bit of bend to them, but I will say that this is more than I've seen on, you know, a Stratocaster or any other bolt-on that I've played. Just what it is. Lastly, I want to point out how simple this headstock is, and I kind of like that. It just says Leo Jaymz on the top, and then printed in very fine lettering, double cut standard. Just a simple little design. Kind of reminds me of a lot of the old guitars from the 60s or the Teisco guitars that just sort of had a headstock on them, or even the K guitars. It just would say K and that was it. Kind of fun, kind of nostalgic. I don't think that's on purpose. I just think that's a matter of the budget playing a part in the design of this guitar. And moving on to the hardware of this guitar, we've got, of course, our strap buttons on the bottom and the top here. This one is on the back side of the horn up top, which obviously is a little bit different than what you find on a SG standard. You can see where it is in the middle of the neck there, or a lot of times on bolt-on guitars, I've seen this on the Epiphone SGs, I think they will put the strap button sometimes as one of the bolts for the neck. But nope, in this case, they put it right here on the top of the horn. Then moving up from there, we get to our controls. And these are, of course, generally the similar controls to how an SG is laid out. But these are maybe a little bit more uniform. You could say that the diamond is more of a actual square diamond here for your 4 controls. Then you've got your cheap sounding pickup selector, as you always find on these budget guitars. It's very loud. Then just over there, we get to our Tune-O-Matic bridge here. Now this functions pretty much like how any Tune-O-Matic bridge would function, in that you've got individual saddle movement for intonation, and then you've got a screw on either side of the bridge to adjust the general height of that side, and that's how you would eventually set your action, or at least assist in setting your action on your guitar. Now going up from there, we get to our 2 pickups here. Now I could not find any information on these pickups at all. Now I did find 2 symbols on the back, which roughly translated via the Apple app to double macro. Now a quick Google search of this double macro came up with about 20 different companies in China that all seem to make about the same exact thing, but none of them happen to be pickups. So after about 30 or 40 minutes of trying to figure out what these pickups were, I kind of gave up and figured, you know what, they're just going to be what they are. Now I'm guessing to save money, these are probably ceramic pickups, but as the great Bill Lawrence once said, there are harsh sounding pickups with Alnico magnets and there are sweet sounding pickups with ceramic magnets and vice versa. A magnet by itself has no sound, and as a part of a pickup, the magnet is simply the source to provide the magnetic field for the strings. The important factor is the design of the magnetic circuit, which establishes what magnet to use. Amen to that, Bill. We'll see how these sound in just a few minutes and see if these are a good magnetic circuit or not. Now, while I can't give you the information on these pickups, I can give you the readings that I'm getting. So we'll start here at the bridge pickup. I'm getting a 13.98, which is a little spicy. Moving up to the neck here, I get a 8.42, and lastly, in the middle here, I am getting a 5.25, which is not crazy hot, but it's definitely on the hotter side of things for sure. Now, as I mentioned before, I did pick up this guitar because I wanted the versatility of having individual controls of the neck pickup and the bridge pickup here. And let's just see what we're dealing with. We'll pop this guitar over and look at the backside of the cavity here. And yeah, just like I figured you'd get with these budget models, you've got these dime-sized pots in here. The one thing I am surprised to see though is these Mylar 0.022K tone caps in here. I honestly just expected to see those little ceramic discs. So it does seem to indicate that at the very least somebody does care about how this guitar functions and the tone knob works. Next up on the list here we get to the fretboard, and we've got 22 of these frets here. These go end to end. Obviously no fret nibs on this guitar. It does have binding, which is a nice touch, and I do kind of like that. These frets, I'm actually measuring a height of about 50 thousandths, which is a little bit on the high side for most of the guitars that I measure these days, but honestly, it doesn't feel that odd to me at all. Moving up there, we get to a pretty standard truss rod. Now, there's no indication if this is a dual action truss rod or not, but hopefully we don't need to adjust that too much. And lastly, we pop up here to these tuners. These things measure in at a 15:1, which is actually pretty good, and I'll be honest, they feel pretty decent. With no strings on them, there's not really any crunchiness or anything that I found on them, which was pretty impressive actually. Now when it comes to the other features of this guitar, we've got, as you can see, mostly an all black plastics kind of thing going on. We've got our black top hat knobs with the silver inserts. We've got our black switch tip cover on there. We've got a black poker chip with gold writing for rhythm and treble. Interesting choice on that. Next up from there we get to our narrow bevel 3-ply pickguard. This is black, white, black. And it does show you how much this design is just a little bit different than a regular SG. Now you can see there's like an 1.5 inch of wood here before you get to the horn cut out there, which is certainly a different cut than you would find on a 60s SG, for example. Now we've also got our black pickup rings, and then we get to the fretboard, of course. Now these are the trapezoid inlays. It's obviously very Gibson inspired there, and I'm pretty sure these are just a cheap plastic. Next up from there we get to our nut. It looks pretty bad when you look at it by itself. I thought for sure this thing was going to be cut terribly, but it's not too bad for 150 bucks. Lastly we get to this logo on the headstock there. It just says Leo James pretty simply, and then in very, very tiny writing here you can see it says double cut standard, which is a great name for the guitar. It's a lot better than 39-inch solid body electric guitar. Well, the guitar does sit in your lap pretty good. I think it plays pretty good, especially for $150. Actually, I think it plays really good for $150. I don't know where my expectations were, but I didn't expect it to be a fun guitar to play. It actually kind of reminds me a lot of playing my 1966 Melody Maker. It has a similar sort of feel to it, and actually it has a lot of light weight like that too. This guitar comes in at a hair over 7 pounds. I can accept that. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is the neck dive. Let's give that a shot here and see how that does. So yeah, 0 neck dive when I'm standing and playing. That's pretty impressive actually, because I think out of all my SGs, I'd say probably 75% of them have a neck dive issue. So it's nice on a budget guitar to not have to worry about that. Now somebody did hit me up about a week ago, and they seemed like they were kind of mad that I didn't do the neck dive test while sitting. They said that was the true way to do a neck dive test, and I gotta be honest with you, I've only ever referred to a neck dive as standing and playing guitar. I've only talked to other guitarists about neck dive while they're standing and playing, so I apologize if that is a thing that people refer to when they're talking about neck dive, but in case you're curious, this guitar does have sitting neck dive. If for whatever reason you're sitting and you're doing this, watch out. I'm going to do the sound test on the Leo James double cut standard here. I will put all my settings right here on the side, and you can see just exactly what I'm doing and what I'm playing. And I should mention that as of about 4 or 5 months ago, all my sound tests use the exact same settings video to video. And what I mean by that is if it's a clean sound, it's a Fender twin reverb, just clean. Sometimes I'll dial in a little reverb. It depends on what I'm actually playing on that. If it's a little bit overdriven, it's going through the clone pedal, or in this case, it's the tumnus pedal. And if it's outright dirty, like when I play Alscata Takedown, it is the Tube Screamer and the Klon clone, but all of it's going into a twin reverb, and the goal is so that you can compare a video from 3 months ago with a video that I might do next month, and you know that those settings are the same. The only difference is the actual guitar and the pickups themselves. Now anyway, enough talking about it. Let's get into it. Well, there you have it, guys. That is the review of the Leo Jaymz 39-inch solid body electric guitar, otherwise known as the Double Cut Standard. Now, 4.4 on Amazon. Would I give it the same rating? It's tough to say because that $150 actually puts a lot of points in that category. But I will say that this guitar definitely punches above its weight for sure. I mean, like I said, I haven't played a $150 guitar in 25 years or so, and I was very impressed by this guitar. But more so than being impressed with this guitar, it makes me actually want to just try out the Epiphone model that's $150, $170, whatever it is, and see if it's any better or worse, because that also has a bolt-on neck as well. But I'm not too sure of what kind of electronics they put in it or the pickup. So I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. Should I grab one of those and do a review? I don't want to inundate this channel with just SG videos, but I also think there's probably a good number of you that would be interested to know that. So let me know in the comments below. I appreciate you guys watching the video. I will put a link for this guitar in the description below. If this is the first time watching one of my videos and you like content like that, consider subscribing. Or if you don't want to subscribe and you just like the video, consider clicking the like button because that helps too. All right, I will talk to you next time.